So we're in this series, and it's called That Moment, okay? Because here's what we know. I know this about you, even if I don't know you, is that we spend a lot of time and money, effort, and energy and thought trying to create moments, don't we? My wife's already trying to plan trips for 2 years from now, right? And they like to talk about it, and this is what we're going to do next week and next month, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's awesome. I think we're supposed to have a very high-functioning, exciting life. But what we're doing there, we're trying to create moments that are memorable, that instill something into our kids or creates a memory between you and your spouse and family, right? So we know what this is, to try to create moments. But this is a little bit more than that. We're talking about that moment. We're talking about where it's a life-changing moment, one that you can't deny happened, one that you can always look back to and point to. That's something that even other people see that you experience. So we're talking about a moment that really sticks. And the Scripture is full of it. So we just tried to take a few to try to create this culture in our church that, man, every time we meet, we're trying to encounter Jesus. All right? We're trying to get in His presence and hear what He wants for our life so we can experience that moment. Obviously, the number one moment, and some of this is for you today. Some of you maybe didn't prepare for this, but listen, God's going to encounter you today. He's going to put His Son Jesus just face to face with you, and you didn't really expect it. And today's your day, maybe to give your life to Him. Okay? But that moment kind of moments don't just stop with that. I think it's all along the journey of following Jesus. There's defining moments that He changes us and moves us forward, and that's what this series is about. I'd encourage you to go back and on our archives page. We're all over YouTube. We're kind of YouTube famous for our services, and kind of catch up if you missed last week. And so we've gotten a lot of emails and texts and personal conversations that just say, man, God's really moving me forward. He's drawing me to Him and moving me forward. And it's all because you've exposed yourself to His presence. Y'all with me? Is that all right? Let's do it. All right. So I'm hoping that, I love how we thought we'd mix it up a little bit. Brandon Peavy read that with awesomeness. And so what I'm hoping today with this scripture is that Bartimaeus' story, that his story would be your story. Okay? That's the goal here. And so we're looking for that type of encounter. So we're going to go back through it, and I'm going to give you some context so that you can really sponge this up, so you can really apply it, something you can walk out of here with. It's not over your head. It's in a way that you can understand it now, right? That you can take your steps now, all right? So here we go. We're going to go back through it. And Mark chapter 10, 46 through 52, however you want to do it. Pull your phone out, your tablet, or the big Bible right here on the screen, all right? Just follow along. It says, then they came to Jericho. It's talking about Jesus and His disciples, okay? And it's Jesus and His disciples together with a large crowd. Listen, when people hear about Jesus, people tend to gather. As they were leaving the city, a blind man, Bartimaeus, which is son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside begging. That's the context. That's what's going on here. I want to tell you a little bit about Jericho, just where we are in this moment. Jericho's a city. It's a famous city, and it's where people come to and cut through. It's a major a route in those days, okay? A lot of things in the Bible happened in Jericho, okay? It draws all kind of different people. A lot of like it's here today. You look around, everybody's different. I love that. And it's drawing all these people because there's a lot going on. It's a time during maybe Passover or some type of formal occasion, and people come from all their rural areas to come here, okay? And so Jericho, they're coming back and leaving, but they're coming back from a rural area where they've been encountering farmers and fishermen, people that were considered not really that big a deal, okay? But they were coming into the city and then again leaving the city. And so they were going to position themselves. They were probably getting supplies. They were getting very important things, kind of like Black Friday. That's probably what this would look like at this time of year. Because Jesus knew where the crowds were, right? And He knew that there would be people, any crowd that size, people would be in need. They'd be in desperate need. And so Jesus is cutting through from here, and it's jam-packed with people, okay? I want to tell you a little bit about Bartimaeus. That's how you say his name, Bart, if that makes sense. Bartimaeus. And Bartimaeus, his name actually means honor. When you look it up in Greek, his name means honor. He's the blind guy we're talking about. He's not the star of the show. Jesus is the star of this show. But we're going to look at Bartimaeus. I think we can learn from Bartimaeus. But what's ironic is his name means honor. All right? And it goes out of the way to tell us it's the son of Timaeus. I'm going to tell you what that might mean. What that most likely means is, back then, number one, you were always identified with your father, right? Where you come from. That tells a lot, okay? And it was an honor to have a child. And sometimes you'd have access to things you wouldn't ordinarily have access to, depending on who your father was. So when you introduced yourself, you would introduce yourself in certain circles as, hey, this is who my daddy is. All right? So we know this from, he's the son of Timaeus. But because he's blind, listen to this, because he's blind, because he has something wrong with him, right? People usually that was a dishonor. See the irony there? His name means honor. But at this point in his life, he's a dishonor. I'm going to go so far to say, and maybe you've experienced this or know somebody who has, when there's something that's wrong with somebody, something that's different, you see it a lot. Some parents distance themselves even from their children. Okay? So we see Bartimaeus, he's blind, his name means honor, but he's living a life that is considered, because if something's wrong with you, maybe you felt this way before, I must have sinned. It tells me if I'm blind, it must be because I've done something wrong. All right? So that's the position. That's what his name means. So, and this is also, when Mark writes this, he's trying to tell you this isn't just a story. Like, let's think of like some scenario. He's saying this is a real person with real issues, and we're telling you about a real encounter. And so I can relate to Bartimaeus a lot more than you think, because I'm probably legally blind. No joke. I mean, you could probably see my contacts in my eyes. That's how bad my vision is. But it is so bad. And I wear glasses. You'll probably never see me in them, because more people have seen Bigfoot than have seen me in my glasses. You know what I'm saying? More sightings of him than me with my glasses on. It's just not going to happen. They're that bad. It's embarrassing. And so I can relate. I'm like, man, this is almost me. This could very well be me back in the day. And I'm going to tell you how bad it really is. I literally went to the eye doctor Thursday. And I said, my contacts, this is my last pair. If they split, I'm not letting church people see. Because look, I feel like you judge me. I said, I need contacts. They said, well, you're going to have to last through Sunday, because they won't be here till Monday, 1-800-CONTACTS. And so they said I get a discount if I mention that to you. No, I'm just kidding. But the point is, I went to the doctor, and it's a fancy place. I probably uninvited somebody to church is what I'm really about to tell you. Have you ever done that? Not on purpose, but inadvertently. I think I did that, and here's what happened. It's a fancy place, okay? I mean, they're charging $30 if you miss, all that junk. And so I got there, and they handed me off to about 3 different people along the process. Billing, up front, who's your card? This lady's going to take you back to the room. This lady's going to come do this test. This lady's going to take you, on and on and on. Finally, you make it to the Wizard of Oz. I mean, the eye doctor lady. But along the way, they're passing me off to people, and they said, Mr. Myers, what we need to do is run these tests. They blow that puff of thing in your eye and map it out. I said, okay. I said, I didn't bring my glasses, because I can't lift over 20 pounds, so I didn't bring those. I said, so she said, that's okay. Here's a little vial, and just put them in there. I said, I got to warn you, I can't see the look on your face. She laughed, but I wasn't kidding. And so I took them out, and she led me to wherever I was supposed to sit. And this person came in. I sat there a little while, because you wait in different rooms, and this is a true story. I should have Snapchapped it. Golly. Ain't funny. Are you laughing at my glasses? And so finally I'm sitting there, and every person comes in there doing something, and this person opened the door and said, do you have diabetes? And I said, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Oh, thank you. Close the door. Okay. I went on about my, did the eye test. The doctor came in, put my contacts in, and turns out, I don't know if you've ever done this, probably not. That wasn't a sir, that was a ma'am. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm embarrassed right now. I thought, God, that was a ma'am. So I think they overcharged me. I didn't say nothing. I was so embarrassed. And I just came, whatever, lady. And I even told the eye doctor last, I'm sorry. I thought that was a sir. She said, it's okay. Everybody says that. I was like, okay. All right. So I didn't feel so bad. But the whole point of that is, man, I guess he was a smoker. I can really relate to Bartimaeus because, man, if I didn't have contacts and health insurance and technology, I'd be sitting on the side of the road like this guy. I would probably experience the same thing he experienced, literally. Now, what I want you to catch is this isn't all about being blind, because some of y'all could see a fly on the wall, a mile away. But we're talking about spiritual blindness, the condition that we're in, right? Because we're born into sin, and we're born with a condition of blindness. And it's not until we encounter Jesus that we can experience healing. And it's not optical, although it can be. For Bartimaeus it was. But it can be a spiritual healing, something where God lets you see things the way he meant for them to be and what he created you for. All right? And that only comes from that encounter where we surrender our life to him. So I don't give too much away, but that's kind of where Bartimaeus is at. Being a blind man back in those days meant a lot. And maybe you're not blind, but maybe you can relate. I'm not blind, but I feel isolated sometimes. I feel forgotten and overlooked. I feel like nobody wants to be around me. I feel judged. So maybe you can relate to him like I can relate to him. And there's, I'm a burden to people. I have to depend on people's mercy all along the way and literally depend on generosity of other people. And sometimes I like being there. We're taught and we strive to be as independent as we can. I pay my own bills, I pay my this and that. And so we strive for that. And so it's hard when we got to depend on somebody else. And so this is literally what his life looked like. And while we're talking about generosity and what he depended on, I want you to write this down. This is important if you're trying to follow Jesus. All right? Trying to get some details out of the life of Bartimaeus. Listen to this. Generosity, it'll be on your screen, shifts lives from hopeless to hopeful. Generosity does that. That means when you do without, when you do something you don't have to do, or it's special when you demonstrate generosity. And that's what we want our church to be known for. Okay? No matter what we're doing, who's the pastor, what's going on, that we're known to be generous. Right? Yeah, you can clap for that. That's a pretty good thing to clap for. But mainly because Jesus is associated with generosity. That's why we do it. And so we had the grocery store blitz yesterday, and listen, man, I couldn't believe it. Hurricane Joaquin was coming, and it was raining, and it was cold. People breaking out their jackets and scarves and galoshes, and they showed up, man. It was like Joaquin didn't even come. I was going to say something, I better not. But the thing is, what he had done here, what Bartimaeus had done, is position himself for hope. If all these people are coming, it's a pretty good idea that I'm going to expose myself. I'm going to be at the crossroads of all this hustle and bustle, and maybe people will look at me, and obviously I'll be blind, and they will help me out. And so he's looking for hope, and that's what generosity does. It gives hope to the hopeless, okay? And then we do it in every area of our church because it's associated with Jesus. It puts us right there with him. It reminds people of Jesus. So for years he's done this, no doubt. This is a man, all right? And he's done this for a long time. It's been the way he's lived life. So go with me to verse 47. It says, when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. He started yelling that out loud. And I want to stop with that. He heard that it was Jesus. Man, it's like we pull this out of everything we read. This has got to be in the DNA of our church. It's got to be a characteristic of Christ followers, not just at this church, but everywhere. If you're trying to move forward in your walk, you got to catch this. It says that he heard that Jesus was coming. What that implies is somebody told their story, right? That says that somebody, they didn't sit on their story about their encounter with Jesus or what they witnessed. Isn't that awesome? So this says that he heard that someone told their story. So listen, that's what gives people hope when they hear your story. Listen to this. Write this down. When you tell your story, people hear hope for their situation. I'm urging you to tell your story. I'm encouraging you that it's a part of this following Jesus thing. Some of you are like, man, I just came because somebody invited me. I'm just being nice, or I'm really curious about what's going on. I've been burnt in the past. Will somebody just lay it out? Quit telling me it's about clothes. Quit telling me it's about carpet and stained glass windows. All is beautiful. But listen, not ever mentioned in Scripture. So listen, Richard, would you just preach it to me straight? Right? And I'm telling you that it's all about your encounter with Jesus and you regurgitating that story over and over in the lives of people around you. Because maybe, listen, here's the whole point. Maybe your story is going to draw somebody to Jesus. You give them hope when you tell your story. So let me give you a real life example of that. We live in 2016, right? And so we're all about social media. I don't think Satan created social media. I think God did, right? And here's an example. I love it. We've got probably, I think, the best church that I know of around here that maximizes and leverages social media. Okay? They'll say, hey man, come to my church. This is what our church is doing. This is whatever. I want to encourage you to move into maybe one day get the boldness, right? To say just a little blurb. Maybe it's not the day I got saved. This is all that happened. Waters parted and all this stuff. But I'm saying maybe it's for that week, something that God did. Tell a story about Jesus, right? Find a way to do that. Move, still promote your church and what, your involvement is there. But tell a story about Jesus. Because I believe that tells a better story and draws more people to Jesus than even if you talk about our church. So try to go to that next level with that. I really believe that. So when you tell your story, people hear hope. Maybe that can happen for me. Maybe what happened for them can happen in my situation. And that's what people hear, and it grows an interest and a curiosity. So what's going on here is Bartimaeus is seeing an opportunity. He's seeing that moment approaching him. Right? He's had a lot of moments. A lot of them's been bad, I'm sure. But here's that moment coming at him. It's coming by, and he's got an opportunity, and he saw it coming. Now, he could have easily let it slip by. Okay, but he saw it coming, and what I think is he saw that was a moment. That was one of that moment where I can't miss this. He had positioned himself there for hope, and he's heard about Jesus, and here he comes. Jesus is passing by, right? And that happens so much in a church setting. Is God did a lot to get you here and bring you here, maybe bring you back to church and in His presence. And that's awesome that you're here, and that's a goal to have. But what happens when Jesus looks like He's passing by you? What happens then? What about that experience? That you can call out to Him. And this is what it says. It already said that, hey, he started yelling, Jesus of Nazareth, have mercy on me. And people started shutting him up. They tried to. They said many rebuked him. You got those people in your life? That when you try to get boldness for God, man, I feel like God's pulling me towards Him and trying to put new things into me. And you got people really jawing it up. That may be, man, that's a waste of time, or that's stupid stuff, whatever it might be. But in their case, they're saying, many rebuked him and told him to be quiet. Shut up is what they're saying. You're too loud. You're making a scene. But this guy's desperate. Bartimaeus is desperate. He can't live life like this anymore. It's over. I can't take it another day. And his is blindness. And whatever yours is. He's saying, I can't take it anymore. And they're saying, but his reaction to that was, but he shouted all the more. He just got louder. And what he's saying to them is, I can't do this anymore. And you're not going to speak into my life anymore. I'm not going to worry about what you think or say anymore, because I'm desperate. I need Jesus to change my life. And if He's done it then, He'll do it for me. Okay, that's what he's heard. Because sometimes people get in the way of Jesus. Can you amen that? Right? And it's not Jesus. I don't think many people have a problem with Jesus at all. Gandhi even said it, Gandhi didn't eat for a long time. He said, look, he wasn't a Christian, but what he said. He said, look, I like your Jesus. It's His followers I don't care for too much. That's what he's saying, right? Hey, man, sometimes he's got a point. But listen, we can change that. We can start with the people that are in our circle, okay? We can change the perception they have on God. So here's the application point for this, is don't let people steal your moment. Don't let people steal your moment, in quotations, that experience that you need and God wants you to have. Don't let people steal it. Be done with that. There comes a point in everybody's life that they got to decide what they think about God and what they're going to do with God. And most of them, it's because of what other people will think. You got to get tired of that. You got to blow through that. Because listen, one day you're going to be standing in front of Jesus. I hate to get all Bible, but I'm the preacher, right? Is you got to give an account. And look, you're not going to give account on what other people thought. That's not going to fly. So now's your time. Listen, you're old enough, right? You're at a point in life. I'm telling you, nobody really cares what you're doing anymore. You got to worry about you and your family and your church family, and just say, man, I'm following Jesus from here on out. That's it. That's it. So don't let people steal your moment. Don't let it go by. He saw there was a window of opportunity there, and he wasn't going to miss it. He wasn't going to let them steal the moment. And the Bible says he was yelling, "Son of David." Remember that part in Scripture we read and what Brandon Peavy read? Son of David. He's addressing Jesus here in public. Remember, he's loud. He's making a scene. Everybody's stopping and looking. What the heck's going on? And the Bible says he addressed him, calling him Son of David, which hints, it does a couple of things. It hints that, not hints, it says, I believe he's the Messiah. I believe he's the Savior. I'm calling out in front of everybody. And what this would have done, this would have been a critique, this would have been a criticism of the Roman government. Because look, Caesar is really the God. And what he's saying is look, Jesus is the real God. So he could have gotten beaten up for this. For what he's saying is he's above Caesar, which is a crime. At least jail. And probably more in some cases. And he doesn't care. What he's saying is, I don't care what anybody thinks or says. This is what I think about who Jesus is. And he calls it out in public. And I think this is my favorite part of this encounter. Check this out. This will be important for you. I think you can understand this. I think you can retell this part. Okay? In verse 50 it says, so he's yelled out. And what Jesus said is, who's calling me? Tell him to come here. Telling a blind man to come here. All right? Tell him to come. Bring him to me. And verse 50 says this, throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. I love this because you got to know what's going on with the cloak. It was a cloak. It wouldn't have been anything else that he would have had. He's broke. He's counting on a generosity. Maybe it's food, maybe it's coins, but probably just food. But he's got this cloak that a lot of blind people or homeless people would have had. And this thing would have been so raggedy and torn up, but it would have served them well. Because a cloak would be the most prized possession that he had. And what would happen is, it had a lot of different ways to be used. It was very valuable. He could roll it up for a pillow, right? Roll it up and lay his head down at night. If it gets cold or rainy, Hurricane Joaquin, he could cover with it, right? A lot of times maybe spread it on his lap, Indian style, to catch coins or food, to catch generosity, right? So this would have been something that he would have held on very tight to, something very important to him, right? And so everywhere you go, you would see that. And that's what makes this so specific and specifically important, is what Mark's saying is, look, don't blow through this story. Don't blow through this encounter. I want you to get the full effect. He had a cloak with him. We all would have known that. And that's why I'm telling you, he threw that thing to the side. Okay? And some of us have a cloak in our life. Yes, not a vampire kick cloak, but it's things that make us feel secure, and it provides for our needs. Maybe that's a job. Maybe that's a relationship that we held on tight, because without that, we'd have absolutely nothing. But it's gotten to the point in this encounter where it's gotten in the way at this point. Jesus saying, come to me, I've got something for you. He's saying to Bartimaeus, and he's saying to us. And he says, he threw his cloak to the side. And I want you to capture this, and maybe you're an 80s kid, or you had kids who were in the 80s, or actually there's a movie coming out now, the Peanuts movie. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Hand claps for Charlie Brown, Blockhead, yeah. And I tried to look and see when it was coming out, but Charlie Brown, all the weird characters, I love all the characters. I love Peppermint Patty. I love him, her. I love Lucy. I like Charlie Brown's sister is Sally. And then you got Linus. I probably relate to Linus the most because he had this blanket, right? I love Linus because he's the first one to tell me about Jesus through his little Christmas monologue, right? I appreciate Linus. And what's the kid? All the kids had something wrong with them, something going on with them. And I started thinking, man, it's like, here's the next application point, actually. Where's these kids' mamas at? Write that down. This is important. Help me figure this out. Because I'm like, look, you got to, no offense to bald-headed people, but if you're 8 years old and don't have like a condition, and look at Linus, I mean, his hair was thinning. I'm like, get some Rogaine, kid. Where's your mama at, right? You're 8 years old. Hear me out. I want to vent about this. 8-year-olds, I guess they're 8, cooking Thanksgiving dinner by themselves, right? Popcorn and toast for Thanksgiving and spending the night out in a pumpkin patch. Where are mamas at, right? Are y'all with me on that? DSS needs to get involved. That's what I'm trying to tell you. What the heck? WTH. What the heck? But back to Linus. And what about the dirty kid, like the cloud of dirt followed him around? DSS. I'm just kidding. But Linus had this blanket, man. It could be a whip. It could be a kite. It could be a parachute. I don't know. He used it for everything. It was very important to him. And if I remember right, if I'm a child of the 80s, I will, there was a whole episode just about trying to get his blanket from him. I mean, he was attached to this thing. And that's what, and the reason I connect with Linus on that is because I had 2 blankets in my childhood. I had a Nona. It was a blanket. I couldn't go anywhere without it. Forget about it. And I had a Nona when that one was just gone. It's like, had holes all in it. And I got a Whoopie and a Nona. And so it made me feel safe. It made me feel secure. And if everything else was going chaotic, I at least had this blanket. And that's what Bartimaeus, that's what's going on with him, is that he's got this thing. But to, listen, and some of y'all, this is what today's all about for you, is sometimes that thing that you're so attached to keeps you from experiencing what God has for you. And so Mark made it a point here. Let's go back to verse 49 and 50. It says, Jesus stopped. And I love that Jesus stops. He's probably doing something very important. But somebody in need calls out to him. What that tells me is we could have had any application more about it is, listen, Jesus is willing to stop for our situation. He's willing to do that. He sees our need. It says Jesus stopped and said, call him. So they called the blind man. Cheer up, on your feet. He's calling you, right? He's calling you. Throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. And Mark doesn't want us to miss that moment when he threw his cloak to the side, because the cloak had been a necessity up to that point. So write this down. This is the very next step for many of you today. And it's exactly what Bartimaeus' step was. Listen, walk away from old things so you can embrace the new. Now, I don't know what that means for you. If maybe it's a relationship, and maybe it's your job, maybe it's your past, maybe it's negativity in your life, right? Maybe it's your pride. What is it? What is it? Because it was getting in the way of his. You have to walk away from that old thing before you can ever grab a hold of the new thing. However that speaks to you, I believe God's got the power and ability and the interest in your life to tell you that. Because he says, I make all things new. That's one of the most famous things that Jesus said. And that is hope for us. That's the gospel for us. That's good news for us, is that, listen, I make old things new. I don't give you a better version. It's not a better version of you. It's not an updated, you know what I'm saying? It's not like updating your phone. He says, I make all things new. Yeah. So you fill in your blank on that. What's God filling in your blank on that? What do you need to let go of? And not just let go of it, but throw it aside. Because Jesus didn't say, hey, you come on and bring your cloak with you. I'm probably going to need that too. He doesn't need the cloak. He says, come. So what are you holding on to that keeps you from experiencing Jesus and what he has for you? Verse 51 says, what do you want me to do for you? Jesus asked him. Now I don't think Jesus didn't know what this guy needed. I think everybody within a mile radius knew what was going on with this guy and what he needed and wanted. Okay? But he said, the blind man said, Rabbi, that means teacher. Somebody tried to make that word mean too much. It means religious teacher. He said, I'm recognize you that you know what God would say. I want to see. I want to see. And it seems obvious. But I think sometimes Jesus wants us to verbalize that to him. I think he puts people in our life too to verbalize it to and to have prayer with and for about it. But he just doesn't want to read your mind all the time. He wants you to verbalize it in your prayer. God, this is what I need more than anything. I'm desperate. I can't do it on my own anymore. I want to depend on you. I want to see. He didn't ask for money. I thought that was cool, right? But more than money, I'm sure he needed it. But more than money, I want to see. I want to be healed. I just don't want to be fixed temporarily. I want to be healed, right? And so it says in verse 52, we're getting close to being done. It says, the Bible says that Jesus said, go. When do you tell a blind man to go? You don't. You take him with you. You tell him, hey, I'm pulling you here. I'm guiding you here. I think it's awesome that he said, go. That implies that there's a future ahead of you. There's a path ahead of you. He said, your faith is what healed you. That's gold for us. That it's faith that heals our situations. His is blindness. It's faith that heals your marriage. It's faith that heals your circumstances financially. It's faith that heals your job situation. Jesus saying it's your faith that healed you. It goes on to say, immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. So did you get that? That it's your faith that gave him his sight. So it's extremely important that you answer this question. You don't have to say it out loud. Which came first? His faith or his sight? In this miracle that he desperately needed, which one came first? Some of you are waiting on Jesus to do something so that and say, when this happens, man, I'll have all kind of faith. And Jesus said, it really doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Our faith comes first. He got his sight because of his faith. And so write this down. A couple things. I couldn't decide between two. I just threw them both at you. What Mark's trying to tell us is write this down. Faith precedes a miracle. It ushers it in. If some of you are waiting on a miracle, but you forgot the whole equation, I'm talking about math now. Go Huskies. I know it's hard. So he didn't use math. He used this. Faith precedes a miracle. Where's your faith? What are you doing actively that says, God, I believe that you're going to work in my situation. I'm not just going to say it. I'm going to show it. I'm going to be obedient to you because I know that affects my miracle. I need that. So don't forget it. Don't forget that part. And here's the other one. I just couldn't decide. Faith precedes the amazing things that you want and need God to do in your life. Faith precedes the amazing things that you want and need God to do in your life. But I think something's pretty important there. I think that what Jesus wants us to focus on is his response. Because we can make Bartimaeus, we make this whole thing about Bartimaeus, and look, he had faith and he got his sight back, and that's true. So we see Bartimaeus' faith. Way to go, Bartimaeus. But I think Jesus wants us to see something else. I think he wants to see his response to our faith. Does that make sense? He wants us to see, hey, I know Bartimaeus made it, but look at me. Look at what I do in those situations when you exhibit faith. Look at my response when you are full of faith, faithful, full of faith. When you believe something that doesn't make sense, you're going to experience that moment. I've never had, when I've actually done it, a bold step of faith where God hasn't eventually responded in some way. Maybe it's the way I didn't imagine, but it's an awesome way that I can tell a story about. So the Bible tells us exactly what Bartimaeus did after experiencing this life-changing encounter. It says he immediately, that's an important word that Mark intentionally put there. He didn't have to put it there, but he did. He said it was important. He immediately followed Jesus. But I don't know how many of you know this. We've said this a lot at Revolution Church. Listen, time will talk you out of being obedient to God. And what I mean by that, what we mean by that is, listen, God's going to present something to you. He's going to lay it on your heart, not even because I said anything. He just wants you to make a move that's towards obedience and contributing to building his kingdom. Right? And some of you need to pray you feel like, man, I'll pray about that, or I'm gonna see how it goes. I'm gonna go for a month and see. I'm not gonna do anything. I'm saying, that's cool. I'm glad you're here. But I'm saying, just like Bartimaeus recognized there's a window here, and I don't want to pass by the opportunity for miracles and healing that I need in areas of my life that I can't even bring myself to mention in words. And time has this way of, when you put it off, when you procrastinate, you've done it in life before. You've done it in your life where I should have did something back then. I missed the boat. Hopefully another time will come around, maybe. Time will talk you out of being obedient to God. And Mark is saying that Bartimaeus was immediately obedient. So here's what I believe. I believe for some of you, why don't you go ahead and stand. Go ahead and stand with me. I think for so many of you that Revolution Church is your Jericho. I really believe that. I believe this is a place where you've come and you've positioned yourself for hope. We've designed this because God's designed it for be a place where people can come. They're limping in, maybe not physically, but spiritually and emotionally and every other way, so that maybe there'd be some hope given to them, that they may intersect somebody that may decide to be generous. And I think we do a good job of that. But more important than that is that you've positioned yourself in this place so that you might have an encounter with Jesus, that you won't miss the opportunity.